Welcome to AI FISEC Today, the physical security industry's first podcast dedicated to uncovering the mysteries and opportunities around AI. I'm your host, Don Marone, and I'm really excited for this episode's guest. Meet Rob Crowley, Chief Security Officer at Dataminr, here to talk to us about real-time AI. Rob began his career as a terrorism analyst in London and has worked in corporate security for the last 15 years. Rob has experience across three sides of the industry, including security consultancy, some of the world's largest companies at the Risk Advisory Group, in-house security risk management at Deutsche Bank and Uber, and software development for security intelligence, crisis management, executive protection, and GSOC teams at his current company, Dataminr, the world's leading real-time AI platform for event and threat detection across the physical security and cybersecurity worlds, where he's now Chief Security Officer. Rob has lived and worked in the US, UK, Europe, and the Middle East, and is passionate about transformative effects of AI that it's having on the global security departments around the world. Now, let's jump into the conversation with Rob to learn more about real-time AI. Welcome to the podcast, Rob.
Hi, John. Great to be here.
Super glad to have you and talk about this topic of real-time AI. As if AI wasn't real-time enough, it sounds like there's an opportunity to make it even more real-time, and I'm super interested in unpacking what that topic means, especially as security professionals, right? Would love for you to give the audience more of a detailed background of yourself before we get into the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, John, thank you so much for having me. Big fan of the show.
Thanks, man.
Rob Crowley, Chief Security Officer here at Dataminr, worked in corporate security for 15 years and worked on different sides of the industry. So I've been super lucky in my career, worked on the vendor side, so working for a security intelligence and geopolitical company. I worked in-house, as you said, at Deutsche Bank and Uber, and currently working on the software development side. So I've really seen the industry kind of transform over the last 15 years. I've also been lucky enough to work in different teams in different countries and different regions. So I've been based in the UK, been based in Europe, been based in the US, and I also used to live in the Middle East. So I've seen how kind of different cultures, different environments impact how security teams in different locations and different industries kind of work together. And I think it's just a super exciting time for the corporate security industry. Massive change, I think, is coming. I think we're at the infancy of how AI is being used across physical security. And yeah, looking forward to getting into it with you today. I'm
so excited. Yeah, I can appreciate the wealth of experience you have from a practitioner standpoint, someone that's actually on the ground or really in the midst of dealing with security issues, and not necessarily from the outside. And I think we need more of that on the show. I mean, we've had everywhere from consultants to manufacturers. We have had some end users on it. And I think from your perspective, this will be surely one of my favorite episodes, right? So we'll see.
And Don, I was going to say, I think it's empathy. You want to be
absolutely.
This is what I'm trying to bring. Thinking about how do you design a product for people that are actually going to be using the product? What challenges did you have when you had that role or that responsibility? And yes, I've been super lucky the way the career's worked out over the last 15 years.
Awesome, man. Well, looking forward to learning more as we go along with today's meeting. So real-time AI. So we broke up, some prior thoughts on this, on some high-level things we want to hit up. And so I want to hit you with this first question. The first question revolves around proactive risk or security risk. And it says, how is AI enabling proactive security risk mitigation for the world's largest organizations?
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to start, because most organizations we're working with and I talk to every week are trying to be more proactive. So if I think just about Dataminr's AI platform, from a proactive aspect, there's two distinct areas. So AI is helping organizations detect potential events before they occur. Now, for example, this could be a threat against a company or an executive that requires a change to that executive's movements, or maybe a change in the security posture to that executive. But AI is also helping organizations detect the earliest indications of when an event occurs. When I mean events, these could be extreme weather events, industrial accidents, fires, criminal events, acts of violence, etc. Now, knowing about these events as quickly as possible and as soon as possible allows security leaders at the world's largest companies to make fast, informed decisions, and really support things like employee safety, facility protection, helping their organizations detect an event that could have some kind of business impact, and then helping that company respond and recover to generating revenue as quickly as possible. So quick example, real world example from one of our customers. Looting started breaking out in the city center last year. the security manager of this retail store knew that looting was starting in a particular location because it was using our platform, giving the earliest indications of where it's happening. Immediately, he reaches out to that store and to the employees in that store, helps them get home safely, shut down that store, and then inform night shift workers not to come to work. So in essence, there's one event where you're thinking about employee safety, facility protection, and then also being able to open your store the next day. So I think kind of in essence, right now, AI is helping organizations prepare, detect, and respond to events as quickly as possible. And essentially, you can't do that in today's age without using AI based on how many events and threats are happening around the world every day.
I mean, it sounds all positive, right? And I think as security professionals, there tends to be, we've had sessions on the podcast where it does go down a different direction. But I'm on that same line of thinking too, right? I think that there's an abundance of so many things coming. There's also caution that has to play, but there's greater forces at play that probably will dictate some of that, and we would just consume it, hopefully in a safer way. But yeah, I appreciate that perspective, because I mean, to me, it's like, when we try to mitigate risk, to take all these data endpoints for one human is like impossible. And so like now we have these tools that allow us to take them in and do something with them and act on them as high impact things that only humans probably should do. And so, especially in your case, when we talk about larger companies that have an insane amount of information they have to sift through, it's impossible without something like AI in order to help them with that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're living in an age, and I probably should say that Dataminr just looks at public data. So I guess a little different to some of the guests that you've had on, and you've had some amazing guests on from some really interesting companies like Ambient AI and Hakamo and Hivewatch, etc. What we're doing is we're looking for signal within public data to help companies make more informed, faster decisions. And I think decision making, it's an area and a topic that I'm really looking into at the moment. How do we make decisions? How do we make decisions in our personal life and our professional life? And why are kind of hard decisions hard? And I think it really comes down to two factors. Like one, there's kind of emotions come into play, and then there's uncertainty. And over the last 15 years, I've been in rooms with some pretty senior people discussing some pretty big events that are impacting companies, and seeing some people be quite apprehensive to make a decision. Then there's a kind of decision paralysis that kicks in, indecision. And I think it's really down to the fact that, one, as you get more senior in companies, you get judged on your judgments. And two, you don't want to kind of make the wrong decision. And there's that fear that you're basically going to make a mistake. And I think in some ways, you can't control the outcome of the decision you're going to make about a security event, but you can maybe control how your organization responded. And what we see is with real-time AI information is essentially helping organizations not only detect that event, but have more information to make more confident, informed decisions in the moment that could help their companies. But yeah, decision making is a really interesting topic, and there's a lot that goes into it. But I think definitely the more information you can have that's actionable, that's accurate, and that's relevant in the time and in the moment helps speed up those decisions.
100%. I mean, because even if the decision doesn't work out collectively, leadership has agreed based on the data that this was a good decision. So it's not like it's a one where, because I feel like when people are fearful is when it's either a gut, it's a bet, it's basically how much are they gambling? And the data, if it suggests that the gamble's low, right? Or if we're risking to lose something to get something greater, then it might be worth it. Even as companies experiment with, let's say, AI tools, if they have some high upside on that, but the downside is, much, much lower, then they could say, well, if it doesn't work out like we planned, and a lot of people did that too in the era, I'll call the era of like proof of concept. When I went to San Francisco last year, like in September for an AI conference, they were saying we're dwindling down on this proof of concept era within, and this is more like business automation things, I think, and product, things, not so much on the security side, but there was companies that were just throwing money at experimentation to get ahead, because their thought of the risk of not doing that would put them behind. And so, it's like anything else is sometimes, I mean, obviously better if it's calculative and you're able to kind of determine the downsides and the upsides so that way you don't get into the indecision trap. Because I'm glad you said that, because I always thought to businesses that not making a decision is also a decision.
Yeah.
And so let's move on to a little bit, since you've had the background in enterprises and this, and you're familiar with this. is what are the challenges that enterprises face when integrating AI into their existing security frameworks, and how can they be addressed?
Yeah, I think there's different challenges depending on whether you're trying to build AI internally, which we know some security departments are, their own AI applications, or whether you're trying to buy. But some of the common ones across both, and these are not just related to kind of physical security and corporate security, kind of integrating AI into legacy systems can be time consuming, expensive, and complex. Many companies have these kind of incomplete, messy data sets or siloed data. So I think very often there's, from discussions I'm having with people, there's a kind of expectation versus reality problem where they're ready to get going. They think this tool or product they're going to buy is going to do this amazing thing, but they're internally, they're not actually ready to start using it because their data, their own data is just kind of super messy at the moment. And then the need to train people and kind of strategically and top down kind of have a strategy around how is the team, how's the department going to use this product or service. AI is for everybody in the company. It's not just for the kind of junior, younger employees that are entering the workforce. And I think that you need a strategic plan of we have a problem. We are going to buy this tool for this problem or integrate this AI for this particular issue. And then we're going to upskill everybody and train everybody and actually have people use the application and not bring something in that doesn't get adopted widely. In terms of building products, and this isn't just for AI, but I've seen this over the years where corporate security departments and physical security teams have tried to build their own things internally. And some of the challenges are most teams don't have their own engineering or product resources. So even if they get this product built, which doesn't always happen, like who's going to maintain it? Who's going to update it? Over the years, I've heard and seen tools that were built, and within 6 months, people have stopped using them because it didn't have this thing that they kind of realized they needed at the time. So that's a challenge for building, and then a challenge for buying. And I think this is where we all need to become more AI literate, including us that work for AI companies. But who are you buying the product from? Like, what's their expertise? What do they do? Where's this product come from? Who's maintaining it? Because ultimately, when you buy a product kind of now, but going forward, you are championing that piece, that AI solution that's coming. You want to make sure that you know exactly what you believe it can do and what problem you're trying to solve. I'm hearing more and more around things like AI governance committees, legal, procurement questions. So yeah, again, everyone becoming more AI literate, championing the product, understanding where and when to bring AI in is going to be more important than ever.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I heard a couple things there between data, training, engineering resources, and then who are you buying these products from, and really looking into their background. Data for sure. I mean, even so, my company, we make AI agents to solve for repetitive and mundane tasks, typically within operations, right? So we're doing post training, we're now doing pre training, and so even in in this space where the agents aren't taking over the world, but they're solving maybe a narrow task, that even those, as we look at data sets that we're using to enrich those agents, that I've seen some that were super messy and so unstructured that I was like, this is probably not going to produce. Maybe it'll get you 40% of the way there, but it's not going to get you where you want to go. And I don't think people want to hear that, right? I think people do expect. That's why I like ChatGPT is like the worst thing and the bad thing for AI products, right? It was the best and the worst thing. The best thing because it helped democratize AI as a part. It really kicked off a lot of the generative AI era that we're in. For the low price of $20 a month, which is the downside, because it's also the expectation is, I want to buy this thing. It costs me $20 and it should be able to do everything I want. Well, maybe it seems that way from a consumer standpoint as one person interacts, but then I need to, scale it in a business and put it to work. Those things change, and data is fundamental for that. And then you mentioned the part about training. I mean, you're 100% right. As people work with these things, it's almost like, learning. I'm a Microsoft reseller, and like when they use Copilot, for example, when you have to learn how to use Copilot, it's like learning a new way to interact with PowerPoint, for example, right? So it's not like all of a sudden, then the next day it changes and this AI is just doing stuff for me, right away. I don't know how things will change in the future, but the point is like, to your point, it's like, well, we bring in these new capabilities and these tools to enhance our people, but they now need to learn how to use them. So there's additional costs and considerations, but keeping them using it. And some people, like their dogs, they don't want to learn new habits, right? Their old dogs don't want to learn new tricks. And so in this case, people have a resistance towards that. And I think even Microsoft has seen that as they've been pushing what they're doing. And then you mentioned engineering resources, which I couldn't agree more. I mean, most companies, and we're seeing this on our side too, as we're servicing some manufacturers in the industry, is that they don't have AI talent, or even if they can go outsource it, they don't know how to manage the projects because it's the first time they looked into something like this, right? And so when infrastructure gets spoken about, or models strengths, or whatever the topic comes, is now they're out of their lane. And that's a problem, right? If every company is going to have some AIification, that those resources have to come about. And so, well said, well said. So I did want to follow up with something around decision making for security events, right? Incidents. So in what ways does real-time AI-driven intelligence improve decision making during security incidents?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps people kind of, one, again, understand that something's actually happening. And it's really, there's a lot happening in the world. And Data Mine, we're looking at events in the physical world and the digital world. You can't manage a critical event or make decisions about an event unless you actually know that it's happening. And then once you know that it's taking place, obviously, the faster you know, the quicker you can kind of proactively start facilitating a response to that event, making decisions on what do I need to do to protect my employees? Do I need to send them some kind of mass communication message and ask them to shelter in place, or lock down my facility, or bring together cross-functional leaders across the company and explain something is happening. It's not in the news yet, but we believe it's about to impact our company in these ways, and how do we respond? But it's not just a case of knowing that something's happening. Real-time intelligence, real-time information is bringing kind of rolling updates as that situation, as that incident evolves and unfolds, because events are not static. Very often an event starts in kind of one domain. So it could be there's flash flooding happening on a street right now, and then it might lead to some kind of power outage because of some kind of electricity infrastructure gets affected. And then because of the power outage, something else might happen. And that in itself is quite difficult to kind of monitor for and manage. So in essence, it's bringing you information, and you're passively receiving information from an AI platform that the platform believes that you would like to know based on what you told the platform. And then you're getting continuous updates to make decisions, kind of speeding up and empowering you to make more confident decisions and escalate information quicker up the chain. Very often what we see is when people have incomplete data, or they're not sure that something is really happening, they sit and they wait. And that period of waiting can ultimately, when we're talking about kind of life safety issues, can be extremely dangerous. But also it can look as if the company isn't responding to that event in real time. So in terms of companies, particularly enterprises, an external event can happen somewhere in the world. And because the world is so interconnected, that event now can start impacting that company in different ways. So maybe knowing that there is a major incident happening in a country where I have an event next week or tomorrow might lead to me to canceling that event. Or I might be running adverts related to that upcoming event or country that I want to pull and save some money and stop running adverts against a country where a major geopolitical development is unfolding. And there's lots of different ways where kind of corporate security teams can use real-time information beyond just protecting their own employees and facilities, but actually helping the company make more strategic decisions.
Yeah. I've known that for the last bit you mentioned about using the tools to make more strategic decisions, because that's where the meat is. A lot of times proving risk is really difficult in a company. It's like that it has to be high in probability, high in impact for people to really to get big movement out of it. And so I think that additional thought makes a ton of sense. And you said something there back that I would love to figure out a little bit more about. So you said bringing together cross-functional leaders. As maybe you're talking from like the end user's perspective, security operations leader, right? Or the CSO perspective, right? When these security incidents happen and we have to make swift decisions or any really important decisions, what advice would you give to those other, security operation leaders around bringing together a cross-functional leadership in order to move on those decisions or to make those impactful decisions?
Yeah, I think it's about preparation. You don't want to be looking through your HR register trying to find decision makers when an event is happening. So I think good practice is having a definition for what is a kind of BAU incident and what kind of event is actually considered a crisis level event for the company. And then having a crisis management framework, bringing people into that framework. So having designated crisis management leaders by kind of business function and an infrastructure function, and then exercising with them, training with them, meeting regularly with them, explaining that, events are going to happen over the next 12 months that are going to lead to this company needing to make some pretty big decisions. And it can be anything from, again, employee safety, operational resilience, protecting facilities, reputational damage, whatever it could be, or one incident or event that impacts all of those. And essentially running exercises with, certain industries are doing this better than others. So highly regulated industries, oil and gas, financial services, etc., run kind of continuous big crisis management exercises where you are bringing cross-functional leaders from across the organization globally and by country into a meeting room and mocking a simulation. If this happened tomorrow, what would we do? How could this impact us? How can we build more resilience into our planning? So then, God forbid, if that event does actually happen or a similar event, people have some kind of North Star to go back to and go, well, 3 months ago when we practiced and kind of run a tabletop exercise, we kind of thought through some of these challenges. One thing with crisis management that I've seen is very often when this happens, you invoke crisis management. So a big event happens, you hurry off into that virtual meeting room, you invoke crisis management, you send out the back comms, stop what you're doing, please come to this meeting, we need to make decisions right now. Sometimes some crisis management teams take their eye off the event itself. They're not looking at that real-time information that's coming in, and these events are unfolding, as I said, evolving all the time. So that's kind of one piece of advice I'd give. Have a crisis management framework, have crisis management leaders pre-assigned that have been trained, and you want a backup or a couple of backups. Maybe you're not around. So I'm like, hey, Dom, if you're not around, who do I bring to that meeting if this happens? It's your deputy. They need to be accessible 24/7, 365, which is sometimes challenging, and understand that they have a role and responsibility to make decisions, big decisions on behalf of the company.
Yeah. Preparation, I heard, was key, bottom line. So it's a lot less of reactionary. The business already knows about it, or should, and the leadership team already knows about it to say if these things happen, because we're preparing them in a lot of different ways that we can move swiftly on security incidents.
And so you want to standardize as well. What you don't want, one, you don't want to wing it as much as you can.
For sure, yeah.
You've got to make some difficult decisions. But three, you kind of want to standardize. So, if a major event or crisis happens in San Francisco, we shouldn't be treating that any differently to if a major crisis event happens in New York. We should have a similar framework. Maybe there's some nuances by country of what is a crisis for this business or what is a crisis in this country. There's obviously regional country specific nuances, but as best as you can, you want to have one similar process that can be followed globally.
So that process that's similar between wherever it goes can somewhat differentiate, but generally it's recommended to keep it the same. So that way, maybe it's easier to prepare or more consistent on the response.
Yeah, 100%. And then you want to, this is kind of what a lot of UK companies use because it's used in the emergency services, but you have different levels. So in the UK, you have a bronze command, a silver command, a gold command. The gold command are normally the C-suite. Silver command are those actually kind of dealing with the strategic decisions, and bronze is more kind of operational. So bronze could be security guards going to check a suspicious bag. Silver could be a little bit more high-level strategic event that's taking place. But you also want to explain and communicate with executives that the event's happening. You're actively working on crisis management right now, and provide continuous updates to them. And sometimes maybe they've got to dip into that crisis call and you've got some C-suite leaders joining to provide their perspective. But what you don't want to do is be working in a silo and the executives at the top of the company not know what is happening. And there's also, you need to start thinking about, well, who do we need to know that we're even working on this? It could be the regulators need to know that there's an event that's happening that we're working on, or it could be customers or shareholders or clients, etc. I think communication and preparation is key.
I have so many more questions, but I'll get back to the AI episode. Thank you for that, Rob. So let's talk about multimodal AI. So multimodal AI are things that can, it's AI that can combine text, images, video, sensor data. How are they contributing to a more comprehensive understanding of security threats?
Yeah, so multimodal fusion AI, it's a technique that Datamind pioneered for event detection. It's extraordinary technology, and it's, once you start thinking about it, it's pretty simple why it's needed, and I'll get into that. But what it's allowing Datamind to do is to basically detect events that others can't, and provide this more holistic understanding of an event or incident to our customer base. So if I just take 2 steps back, in 2025, when an event breaks, information about that event is breaking across different sources. Well, firstly, it's dispersed and scattered. That's the first thing. And then information is breaking across different sources in different languages and then different data formats: text, image, video, sound, sensor data. So what multimodal fusion AI does is it basically looks for fragments of data across all those different sources and data types, finds these fragments, brings them together, and then using the predictive AI models that we have and the generative AI models that we have, we can then detect the events and then describe the events in real time. If you're just looking at text, you are going to be missing out on a number of events and threats that are taking place around the world. We're living in an age where something happens outside a restaurant. The first thing people do is they pick out their phone, they take images, they take video, and then they're posting that instantaneously to public data. Some of it might have some text to it. Some of it might just be the video. So how are you using technology to understand, like a computer vision model, to understand what is happening inside that video so that you have a better understanding of what's literally happening right now, which is what we call ground truth.
Interesting. Now, is that video that's being pulled, is that something that a security operations team pulls from an employee video, or they get it? You mentioned public sources. So can they, if something happens on the ground, there's been a riot happening in New York City, you could pull from maybe social media feeds to understand the video, like what's happening from different users, or what would be considered accessible information from that perspective?
Yeah, so Datamine is only looking at public data. So let's say there is a tornado. A tornado has just been spotted. Potentially, we as a company might even be seeing the tornado in publicly available traffic cameras. These things are watching things all the time, and again, through those traffic cameras, we understand that is actually a tornado, and it's exactly where it is on that road or street right now. But yeah, these are publicly posted images and videos from different sources that we ingest data from. We're bringing data in from over 1 million different public data sets. So we're not looking at kind of video surveillance streams like some of your other guests recently that are doing some really interesting work on that realm. We are helping organizations understand what is happening on the ground in the locations where they operate, where they have employees, where they have work from home employees, remote employees, business operations and facilities. And yeah, video in 2025 is super important, right? We know that there's a lot of video being produced every day. Just to kind of give you one stat, which still blows my mind, we bring in like text, image, video, sound. If I just look at the text alone, if a person could read a page of text every 2 minutes, it would take a person 950 years to read all of the text that Datamine's AI platform is processing today to find these events or threats. And to put that in another way, if you put 30,000 people in a room, didn't give them a break for 24/7 and just asked them to read all of the textual data that's coming into the platform, they would get through 1% in 24 hours. And they'd have to be able to read it, 150 plus different languages.
I appreciate that you said that, because even Gen AI has gotten a lot of heat about error rates and hallucinations. But when we look at the data, how do you synthesize that much data into making sense of it in the shortest period of time? Even if this thing hallucinates at 2, 3%, 10%, I might take those chances versus not synthesizing the data at all and having no intelligence. Not to say that they do hallucinate that much, because they can be post-trained and become really accurate, right? But yeah.
Yeah, so. And I think this is where purpose-built AI models come in. I think you were touching on this earlier with kind of vertical specific agents as well, which you might want to get into. But yeah, Datamine's AI platform has been developed for one very specific purpose. It is there to detect events and critical information and threats within public data. And it's been doing it for over 12 years now, an archive of all the events and threats that the company's ever detected. It's retrained on our own data set. And yeah, using techniques such as multimodal increases accuracy, increases the speed of detection. And essentially, when you get down to it, AI is about patterns. We as a company, we're looking at patterns within public data. And those patterns indicate that a nascent breaking event is occurring. And the AI platform has seen these patterns before. Again, we couldn't hire enough people to do this manually. And AI is not, in my opinion, it's not just there for productivity and efficiency, which is obviously massive. It's also there to help humans find things that they wouldn't be able to find by themselves. It's a tool or system to help us make better decisions and help our lives easier, make our lives easier. And there's a capacity challenge, right? Corporate security teams, and I think one of your guests was talking about this the other day. There's a huge capacity challenge in some of these departments, whether it's looking at video surveillance or whether it's working in the security intelligence team, crisis management team, the GSOC, the EP team. everybody that we're working with is flat out. There's too many events happening every single day that their company is asking them to detect and help company respond and recover from, or put some proactive mitigation measures in place. So for me, AI isn't a kind of acting shotgun. It's riding shotgun with you. It's that assistant. It's kind of working side by side with you, doing things that it does very well, which is processing very large amounts of data. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't need a kind of go and take some kind of mental break like most of us do every couple of hours. It's working 24/7. It's there 365. And we're moving into this kind of age of intelligence, which I think is also a really interesting area, particularly when, my background predominantly has been security intelligence and crisis management. So when you're entering the age of intelligence, what is the role of an intelligence analyst? And how is AI going to change the workflows and what an intelligence analyst can do based upon this new technology that we have?
Yeah, a lot of things will change for sure. And so you mentioned patterns, bleed-in prediction, and which is the next question. But before we get to that, I want to hit on some prediction, but in my own short entertainment, maybe it'll entertain the audience. I'd love to hear what you think. I mean, this might already exist, but when you mentioned earlier public cameras, like street corner cameras or anything that's accessible from that public data perspective, is there, maybe this is where your company plays in, but I wonder if anyone else is doing this, and I could just be, maybe they've been doing this for 10 years, I don't even know, but when there's high speed chases, to be able to predict where that high speed chaser, the criminal, is going to be, so that way they can build blocks and not have humans interpret, well, it's on this interstate, so he's either going to get off this exit or this exit. We don't know. But if this guy's been doing a high speed chase for the last hour, maybe there's a prediction model around where they'll end up so they can put police officers there in order to stop that high speed chase. Is that just my weird mind thinking, or does that exist in the world?
Great question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I knew this for us, again, it's public data. It's the earliest indications of events and, looking at a holistic different set of data. So we're processing text, image, video, sound. So things like emergency response scanners. And people have been listening to emergency response scanners for years. Again, AI can now listen to these scanners and understand the what, where, when. And again, that helps our customers understand what's happening and take faster action.
So maybe we're going to take a pass on the Rubbage AI agent for now.
Yeah.
So let's talk more about this predictive piece, right? So going a little bit deeper. So what role does predictive AI play in identifying emerging risks before they escalate into significant security events?
Yeah. So for us, we use predictive AI to essentially kind of detect and classify what kind of event is happening, looking at these patterns in public data. I think we're on the cusp, not just us, but others, of really moving into a kind of new realm where Gen AI powered predictive intelligence is something we're actively working on, where we won't just be able to detect that an event is happening, but we're going to be able to start ideating on what may happen next. So based on everything that we as a company know that's happened in the world over the last 12 years that we've documented, and we're detecting, I think, around 250,000 events a day. When an event does happen in the future, we just put out a press release last week talking about 2026 for this new capability coming. We'll then be able to kind of say what might happen next, rather than kind of definitely what will happen, because if I knew what is going to happen, I'm buying a lottery ticket today.
Exactly.
We're going to help people start kind of ideating and have the LLMs write out and be that missing link that I think exists today with predictive analytics and predictive intelligence. So as a company, I've known a data miner nearly 9 years, worked here for 3 years. The first kind of phase of the company's journey has really been focused on the what, like what is happening, which is really hard to discover in real time, in 220 countries around the world. Now moving into what I call like the so what phase. So we know what is happening, but now so what to you, and so what else might you need to know? So actually last week we announced our first AI agent, which we're calling the Intel agent. It's launched for our cybersecurity product first. It's in beta, but it's amazing. I've been playing around with it for the last few weeks. And it's essentially helping to provide real-time context about the event. So when something happens, what else might I now need to know about this threat actor, about the vulnerability in the software, about the history of what has happened with similar events, and then not in the kind of near future, we're then going to be bringing in client-specific information into that so what aspect. So rather than providing a generic briefing about what is happening, it will be tailored specifically to your company, to your business, and what Dataminer knows about your organization with the information you've shared with us, which is super interesting. And I think moving the real-time information in a brand new direction. And then after that, after the what and the so what, comes the now what. Now what might happen to help people plan and prepare. And I think that's where predictive AI is really going to come into its own and help people kind of foresee how that security event or safety event may kind of develop and unfold over the coming minutes or hours.
I love it. So, when you come out with a customer, let's call it customer specific Intel agent, that we're going to have a product release on AI FISEC today, right?
Hey, we'd love to. I've got you and I chatted a few weeks ago. I'm in a really interesting and privileged position here because I'm sitting at the junction of AI engineering teams that are building these solutions, customers that are looking for these kind of solutions. And I'm kind of bang in the middle, trying to be that pathway, feeding what are the requirements to what does this thing need to do to add value. And I think that's where a lot of companies are right now, looking at how do they use AI effectively. And for us, we're lucky in the sense that it's an AI first platform. It's been built from the ground up. We've already got this extremely strong use case, and now we're building on top of that. Of course, when something happens, you're going to want to know more context. We don't, we as humans, as people, we think we can multitask, but we're not great. I think we're moving more into the world of kind of what I've described as on-demand intelligence. Something happens in the world, and we can now tell you not only what is happening, but why it's important to you, what else you might need to know, and then in the near future, what might happen. And I'd love to come on and when those 2 product releases kind of launch, talk about them and hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. Good stuff. And I love that they brought you in. I'm a huge fan of practitioners, people that are involved, right? Rather than the theoretical and hypothetical. I mean, even before I started my company, Highland Tech, I was just doing the podcast, right? So a lot of it was just like, just doing content. And so you're not playing in the game. You're just sitting on the bleachers, right? You miss a lot of good information around that. And so I think the fact that you come from, the practitioner background and you were involved with Datamir's, not just what, but so what, and then coming soon, or maybe now what, and then formulating these different things in order to make this AI useful. Because it's not enough to just come out with AI products. These things have to solve a problem. And there's no better way to solve that than what they're doing with you. And I hope I see more of that with manufacturers in the industry. I don't know that I see that a lot, that they bring, actual security practitioners, right? It's usually they move from one manufacturer to the other, and not so much from someone that actually had to solve these real problems. And that also has a network of people, right? I'm sure coming from Uber and Deutsche Bank, like you've met a lot of people working within your field or around your field that have followed you over the years in your growth. And so they see what you're working on as something to say, hey, if it's good for him, it's good for me. But at the same time, you're able to work with them to figure out what their so what is and what their now what could be. And so I just appreciate the practicality they bring to the table.
Yeah, I don't know why other companies don't do it, to be quite honest.
And they might. I just don't see it that much, right? So from Don's lens, it seems like it's that they don't come from that space as much.
It doesn't. I think, particularly in the physical security space, it doesn't happen that often.
Okay, so right.
I'm getting asked quite a lot from other people, like, how did you've had this kind of relatively strange career journey where you started as a terrorism analyst and you've ended up at an AI company and you've worked in-house and you've worked on the vendor side. Yeah, and as I said, like Dataminer, they want to be customer centric. They want to build products that actually help people make decisions, solve real world problems. And one of the ways to do that, as you say, is to bring in practitioners that can help really translate what are the challenges people have, and then how can you build something that really solves those challenges. And then what I tell people that the working roles that I've had in the past is, don't just look at in-house jobs and don't just look at consultancy. All of these SaaS platforms, AI platforms that need support, they need expertise on on guiding them internally on how can we develop something that really changes the game. I think there's a lack of innovation at the moment, or has been a lack of innovation over the last decade in the kind of physical and corporate security space. I think ISC West was, and I know you were there too, so I watched a lot of your videos that you put out, which were great. I think really showing that we're on the cusp of major change. And I think in the next 12 to 18 months, the physical security industry looks radically different. And again, a lot of that is being built by customer feedback, kind of helping companies move in the right direction. But if you have a couple of practitioners internally, you can speed all of that up.
Yeah, agreed. Spot on. Thanks for following the content, Rob. Appreciate it, man.
It's great. And yeah, I think, you touched on a number of different companies that are working on some really interesting initiatives. And I'm excited to see where, there's so much green space for existing corporate and physical security companies to kind of evolve and adapt over the next, 12 to 18 months. I think, as I said, IC West 2025 was eye-opening for me with AI operators, different agents coming. And I think when we look back on this in a few years' time, we'll go, that was the day that this really became a real thing. And it wasn't just the hype train, but there were actually practical solutions that were going to push the industry forward.
I'm proud of, I agree, man. I mean, I'm proud of seeing there are companies that are into agents, and I was following agents for the last year and a half. I mean, that's what Highland Tech does. That's just what we built. But I think agents stand to be the biggest impact our industry has probably ever known, because we're in a data of sensors and we're in a data of these IoT devices that we can't possibly collect enough, or we can't synthesize in a way that solves tough problems. And so it's going to be good. I mean, I see that there's an aspect of lowering security risks, and I love the idea of, technology being able to help schools, increase safety. I'm super bullish, but let's talk about the bear side, right?
Yeah.
There's always potential pitfalls, right? We're in the security industry. We would be at a loss if we didn't talk about some of the negatives, but we'll come back and we'll do a compliment sandwich in the same line of question. And so let's talk about potential risks of relying on AI for security management, and then how organizations can mitigate those risks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't want to throw the baby out the bathwater. 25, 30 plus years, corporate security has existed without AI. I think you certainly want to look for areas where AI can help optimize your team and improve workflows, speed up some of the manual repetitive tasks that people are doing, that a lot of people don't want to do, and humans are just not good at doing some of these things. So I think it's the case of, and I think this is where strategy comes in, to be quite honest. I think there's a number of security departments right now that are being asked to embrace AI and look for opportunities where AI can come in, but you've got to make the right choices and right decisions. Where do we need people, and where can we augment people with AI? I like walking into an office building and seeing a friendly security guard, normally the first person you speak to. It kind of makes you, feel confident and comfortable walking into that place, particularly if you haven't been there, or, it's also a great way to start the day. I would not like to think about a future where that didn't exist for a particular reason, for a cost-saving reason, etc. So I think, you want to look for, where does it make sense, where doesn't it make sense? And then again, what kind of AI are we bringing in or building? Who's developed that AI? What guardrails are in place? Obviously, data privacy is a massive concern for lots of organizations. AI ethics, responsible AI. How are we kind of taking a human-centric approach to the AI that we're using, and not violating private data, not bringing in models that we believe kind of have a particular bias in them, and then making sure that you're working with companies that are embedding privacy and security throughout their system and into the life cycle of that product development. But it's again, I think we're at the precipice of major change, but still we're in the first innings of how AI is actually going to be used in physical security. But making decisions on, where does it make sense, where doesn't it make sense? Corporate security as a whole is one of the most kind of interconnected companies in departments in an organization. So you need to have relationships with other departments. You need to build a brand. You need to be engaging with people. that is something that AI is not going to be able to do for you. So building those relationships, as we're talking about crisis management, is key. But using AI to speed up some of the kind of day-to-day work so that you can then spend your time on more complex and strategic issues and add more value to the business. And if I look at my side of the house, which is being predominantly security intelligence teams, there's a big debate going around right now. Like, why do some massive companies only have 5, 6, 7 security intelligence analysts or intelligence analysts in the companies when they can add so much value? And I think it's because these teams that I used to be part of are spending so much time putting together products for their stakeholders that they don't have the bandwidth to go and branch out and support multiple different teams and functions across their companies. Kind of where I see AI coming in is I think that AI is actually going to help people make not just faster decisions, but create more bespoke, personalized internal reports and actually bring more attention to the corporate security department and up level the value that the corporate security team is seen as. Listen to some of your podcasts talking about cameras were there to kind of reactively help people respond to an event. Now they can understand how many people are queuing in that line at the airport and use that for kind of business decision making and analytics. And I think it's, the new technology should be up leveling the importance of a security department and making it be seen more as a value center than simply a cost center.
Yeah. Maybe it's just me, but I get super pumped about that because I'm not even that person that has that job opportunity, but I'm excited for them because it takes them. I mean, I can't imagine the drudgery of everything is, security protection. Like what's more fun is saying, hey, I can make the company money. I can do something profound that has like an impact today rather than my impact happening, on the occurrences of security issues. And that kind of thing, I think, presents, when you make a good impact, a big impact in the company, it presents promotion opportunity, more money for them and growth in their career. And I love that, right? Like so I've had a sales background really primarily in the security industry. And when I've done profound things, my career grew. And I've met some amazingly talented security practitioners. But the thing is, they don't get those same opportunities to do something incredible because they're stuck in the monotony of things that they have been forever. And so these new tools and these present new opportunities for them to level up because they've always had that ability. They just might not have had that capability from the lack thereof, the things that they didn't have access to do it. One of the things when we talk about relying on AI and deciding when to use these things, I've made a framework that I use when I talk to customers, which talks about the use of AI agents and when it's most practical. And it's a repetitive versus impact chart quadrant, right? And so the idea is that when it's always repetitive, it's a candidate for AI agents. So repetitive means, it's just something that happens frequently. It's administrative in nature. It's clerical in nature, something like this, something that doesn't take a lot of brain bandwidth in order to do, but it takes a lot of physical energy to do because it happens often. And then you have impact. So low impact, that doesn't hit the bottom line, is much lower risk, and high impact would be the opposite. And so when it's low impact and high repetitive, so in the top left part of the quadrant, it would be a perfect candidate for AI agents. This is something that we can deploy, and it's not going to bring down the company or make an issue. But when it does become high impact, which is what our industry is about, right? How we prepare for high impact, then what the agent could do, even though it's still repetitive, so this is now in the top right quadrant where it's repetitive, high impact, the agent could present information, like in your case, right, that helps them synthesize the data for the human to decide to do something with. So there's still an agentic approach, but then the human would take it home and do the rest, And then I think too, a lot of people think about these AIs going rogue, and I posted something on LinkedIn a couple weeks back, and I think we're just starting the agent era, and agents are something that are really meant to be autonomous in their planning and and their tooling to decide. They decide what tools they use. They decide how they plan, but that isn't necessarily practical like in the real world right now, right? So we're not there where we're giving these agents a goal, because what they found is they can give the agent a goal, and if it has access to the tools to go do it, it will go execute and solve that goal in the least path of resistance possible. which might not be what we want, in many cases. People want to have control. They want to know steps that these agents make in order to get to the goal. And so what we're really seeing in practice today from an agent building standpoint is there's a mix between standard business process automation, so we control the flow of things, and then there's agentic capabilities somewhere involved, right? So one example is if I was to do service support for customers, that maybe I have an exact flow I want customers to go through from a triage standpoint, but maybe there's a loop of open dialogue between the agent and the customer to resolve a tech support issue that I'll give the agent autonomy, based on a knowledge base and having guardrails for a period of 5 to 10 minutes before it moves on the business process automation route. And so I think you're right. I mean, I think the businesses have to determine when they use these things, what's high impact, but what's repetitive, what's a candidate. And then they just build controls in around these things. People, if they don't understand AI, they think that they're just going to do whatever they want, and it's a huge risk. But to your point you made earlier, depending on who you work with, might make that true or might vote against that. And so, anyways, that was my rant.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes complete sense. I think having a plan, like coming up with a plan, how can I bring AI into my security department right now? Does it make sense to be emailing someone saying, I need a new badge, and potentially not having that badge processed for 3 days because there's a huge queue of badge? Or does it make more sense to engage some kind of agent that understands who I am, where I work, and starts automating some of the actions to get that badge to me really, really quickly? So yeah, working out where it makes sense, where it doesn't make sense. I personally believe that, 5 years time, we're going to look back at the corporate security industry and other industries and go, how did we not have agents supporting us? And new people coming in are going to go, wait, you used to do that manually? You're doing that stuff.
Are you crazy?
Yeah.
That's like some of that kids that look at arcade games back in the day. You're like, what do you mean? What was that one from Back to the Future 2? I don't know if you saw that movie when they saw the kids playing the games, or it was like a shooting game with Marty McFly, and they were like, you use your hands to play video games? So it's like in this case, you're like, you used to do manual badging? Like, what's wrong with you?
Exactly. I think it's going to be a little bit like that for the new people coming in. And I think what's exciting is we all have an opportunity around to shape what this is. It's not just going to be shaped by the vendors in this space. It's going to be shaped by the customer. What do you want? Where do you see the value? And how do you partner with those that you're buying services and products from to actually create the future of what you guys are looking for? But for me, I think there'll be collaboration where human specialists, humans are working side by side agents. These are going to be vertical agents that do very specific tasks that are in your corner, supporting you, giving this personalized AI experience in the not too distant future, interpreting emergent developments, and really helping you make faster, more informed actions yourself. And I think that's a super exciting time for the industry, hopefully giving us all a lot of time back, again, to work on that more complex and strategic work to support the companies that we're.
That's it, man. No one rises to low expectations. Everyone wants fulfillment in life, and we don't get that doing repetitive, mundane things.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about something that I think your team is working on, right? So we're talking about integration of Gen AI, which is really most of what the AI hype is about, because we've had machine learning, deep learning for quite some time. I'm understanding that's like used as a basis of high accuracy, and then Gen AI is layered on top of that in some way in order to create a natural language understanding or communication with humans. And so the ways we described earlier. So I've been hearing about these regen AI, I think, and how something like that is changing the landscape for real-time event detection and response. You could elaborate more on your perspective around generative AI, maybe even regen AI from your company, and how that's changing the landscape of real-time detection and response.
Yeah, of course. So again, predictive AI to detect these events, looking at patterns in public data, generative AI to describe these events in real time, and then getting the right notifications to the right companies and public sector organizations. Last April, we brought out a new version, essentially, of generative AI that we call Regen AI. And essentially what that is, it's creating the world's first living event description of an event that dynamically and automatically updates itself as the event unfolds. So super new and powerful capability that's basically saving our users a ton of time quickly understanding what is happening with that event. So one way I like to think of it is data miners running super granular updates for people that need those granular updates as they're occurring. But more and more, I find myself waking up in the morning, grabbing my phone, looking at the Data app and going, hey, here is that short living description of the most relevant, actionable information about what happened overnight with this event, what's happened in the last 10 minutes. We've got customers saying it's saving them 6 hours a day of synthesizing information themselves. Historically, they may have taken some of our content, put it together, created a report, and shared it with leadership. More and more, because of the accuracy rates that Regen and just how quick it is, essentially, it is pure real time. We've got customers that are sharing these Regen living descriptions directly with their executive leadership team when a major event happens. And we got a kind of inbound a couple of weeks ago that mentioned there was a terrorist attack that happened in Munich, Germany, just before the Munich Security Conference, happened just outside one of our customers' offices. And again, they started getting this Regen living description of the event. And rather than having to create their own internal product, they could just share that directly with their leadership team. So I think it's for us, it's the beginning of this new journey that we're on. And now we're entering the agentic AI era, where kind of going forward, Gen AI and agentic AI will help us bring new capabilities to the market, redefining what real-time information is. But Regen, I had a magical moment, with Dataminer back in 2016 when I first saw the product. And I think, when you see something brand new, you're just like, how does this work? And how is it adding? How is it doing that for me? Blew me away. Last April, had the same kind of experience with Regen. It's changed how I utilize the product and utilize the service. And it's super exciting for us as we continue to build that up.
That's great. Thank you for that. So on that note, I think this is a great time to talk about the future and wrap up with the future, looking ahead. So as we look ahead, what might advancements in AI shape the future of enterprise security management and risk assessment?
Yeah, I think we're going to see increasingly, as we're already starting to see, this move from reactive to kind of predictive. AI becoming a lot more personalized for each individual company. Again, for us, we're moving from the what is happening to the so what to your individual organization. And then in 2026, the now what may happen. So it's going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to, I think, open our eyes to what AI can do. I think we're still just scratching the surface, really, of how AI is being used. I think there's going to be, we're going to live in a future, I believe, where AI agents are working side by side with us and also interacting with each other. So at some point, my AI agent might be interacting with your AI agent to help us achieve some common task that we have. And again, it's to try and move the ball up the field. If I look back over the last 15 years that I've worked in this industry, people today are doing the same workflows and the same work I did in 2010 in the same ways. It's very manual still, some of the work that's being done. And I think we're on the cusp of not just kind of disruption, but massive change that ultimately is going to help the whole industry.
Yeah. And you touched on something in my very last question, which was, how does a corporate security team look like in a few years' time? And you mentioned agents, humans working together, and then agents or their agents working with their other agents, right? So if I have two humans, they both have agents, their agents are working with each other. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I believe that we've got a couple of things have happened. Like Gen AI, we had the ChatGPT moment, massive moment in the world where people realized, hey, this is a real thing. Some people weren't using platforms like Dataminer that had been using Gen AI for years. So ChatGPT brought it to the masses. My mom knows what ChatGPT is, and she understands what it does. We're now moving into this agentic AI, which I think is actually going to be kind of the missing link that some people have been looking for between Gen AI and actions actually being taken. For me, the definition I kind of use, because a lot of definitions floating around of what this thing is, but there is a difference between an AI I need to interact with, where I'm asking a question, running a prompt, getting something back, and an AI that is just doing something for me. And I think, as you said, agents are not at the point yet where they're doing all these crazy things that people think they might be able to do, but they're starting to kind of automate some of the things that we might have previously done ourselves. So when I look out and start thinking of, how do you streamline a security department? How do you bring in greater efficiency? How do you find threats, risks, critical information that you couldn't find without using sophisticated, powerful AI. An AI agent can be riding shotgun with you, can be supporting you, can be collaborating with you, and bringing information to you that you might need to make a decision. But they don't just have to interact agent to human. They can interact agent to agent in the future. And I think that future is coming pretty soon from some big announcements of some companies in recent weeks. There's this huge kind of rush to be the platform or one of the platforms that kind of hosts all these different agents and kind of works out, how do people manage agents that they bring into their companies, and all that kind of interesting discussion as some companies start to look at agents as virtual employees or digital employees in this digital workforce. And I think one of the most interesting areas for me is that, physical security systems, video surveillance, access control, there's a lot of interesting tech, important tech that exists in the industry. But many corporate security departments as a whole haven't digitized their workflows. But now they're getting a chance to digitize in the age of AI. Yeah, in some ways it's easier because they don't have some legacy products or legacy systems they want to bring everything together. So yeah, super exciting time. AI is here. It's being used by billions of people today in different AI applications. And I think agents are the next stage of how people can see true value from AI platforms.
Totally agreed. Love all of that. Well said. Well, Rob, we're at the end of the podcast session. It's been an absolute pleasure. My pleasure. I think it's going to be the audience's pleasure to hear this. And I just want to say thanks for joining, and looking forward to connecting again real soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. Appreciate it.